On the other hand, Teilhard was concerned with anomie, or sort of the feeling of loneliness and disconnectedness, hopelessness that he saw arising in secular cultures. And he thought that this resulted from denying the power of human faith, belief, and spirituality. He believed that humans were the absolute most fantastic things in the entire universe. I mean, he would probably just say humans rock above everything else. Just incredible, our consciousness. In fact, he marveled at the fact that with humanity, he said, humanity is evolution that has become conscious of itself. That's how he defined humanity. That's such an astonishing thing. And he said, when you take humans and you say, well, you can't talk about faith, you can't talk about belief, you can't talk about spirituality, people are going to get very depressed and pessimistic. And he pointed out what scientists would do their experiment if they didn't have faith in the fact that they would get an outcome from their experiment. What person like ourselves would try to develop a cure for our daughter's fatal illness if we did not have belief, okay, that even though that there was no scientific cure today, we had belief that we can put together the pieces of science and technology and come up with a cure. And what person can really build an exciting, vibrant society if they're not willing to just go ahead and hug another person? You can't measure the feeling of warmth and love you get from hugging another person, but does that make it any less real? Not at all. In fact, there's nothing realer than love. So what Teilhard said is, let's embrace human faith, let's embrace human faith, let's embrace human belief and spirituality, and let's grow up and not tell these silly, Bible stories about, the ark and the apple, and there's no such thing as original sin. Animals do it, worms do it, people do it, okay? And so that was where he was coming from. And I put this last bullet here because I think it shows how powerful Teilhard was when he says, I'm quoting here from Eisenhower, pessimism never won any battle. Everything that I feel that Bina and I have accomplished, everything that you folks have accomplished, everything that Bill has accomplished with all the folks at Alcor is being accomplished because of faith and belief. Faith and belief are not anti-science. In fact, they are part of the momentum. They're the yin and the yang that go together with science that lets us move us more and more advanced, closer and closer to the singularity. So another aspect of Teilhard, biology is a toolkit and psychogenesis comes next. So this is the part of Teilhard which is like where we say death is optional. Teilhard said there's no problem synthesizing genes. I am extremely proud of the fact that our company, United Therapeutics, is now one of the largest investors in gene synthesis in the world, coming up with new DNAs through our partnership with Human Longevity, Inc. and Synthetic Genomics, Craig Venter's companies in San Diego. We just poured $50 million into coming up with new genes to modify the pig's genome so we can create an unlimited supply of replacement organs for human beings. That is, I think, totally cool, and Teilhard would also completely agree. The people who say, oh, you can't mess with a human lifespan that's messing with God's plan, Teilhard would say, excuse my French, bullshit. God has no plan. There is no God sitting there who has a prearranged plan to be discovered. God is this process of evolution that all of us are doing, putting together to create a universe of maximum joy and total immortality. So these toolkits to synthesize genes, vaccines, medicines, cryonics, mind files, mindware, and mind clones, these are all different ways that we are becoming able to master our lifespans and master the universe. All of this is completely consistent with faith and religion. I really like this one too. I pause for a second every time I read the word Christogenesis, but we also have to realize that words have the meanings that we give to them. There was a point in time when, queer was like a bad word. Now queer is becoming kind of a good word. Weird was a bad word. Now people are reclaiming weird. My friend Ralph Steadman put out his recent book, Proud to be Weird. So, all kind of monster is in the process of being reclaiming. When you combine different genes from different species together, that's kind of a monster. I mean, we are just right past Halloween, right? So, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So, Christogenesis was Teilhard's idea of infinite love applied to everybody throughout the entire universe. This is exactly Terasem's goal of diversity, unity, and joyful immortality. He just called it Christogenesis. And when we get rid of the fears and the risks to our lives, when, as Kurzweil says, we're able to use knowledge and information, nanotechnology, self-replicating nanotechnology, to control things like supernovas, to control things like gamma ray bursts, to control things like asteroids coming and hurtling into the Earth and smashing everything, to control things like cancer and multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's, then we will be creating in Teilhard's worldview Christogenesis. But it's up to us to do it. Whenever I look up the word God, it always comes with these words: omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipotent. But what Terasem points out in our literature is it's obvious that there's nothing today that's omnipotent, omnipresent, omnificent. If there were, you wouldn't have websites like whydoesgodhateparalyzedpeople.com. I mean, why do people get paralyzed? Why do people suffer from Ebola and from Alzheimer's? So it's up to us to build God. That's what Teilhard was saying. That's what Terasem is saying. This will take advanced, ethical, self-replicating nanotechnology, such as this O'Neill space colony, so we can take ourselves and not be limited to life just on the Earth. So we are all God's collaborators in creation. That is a mantra from Teilhard. Love is essential. According to Teilhard, love is the most universal, the most tremendous, and the most mysterious of the cosmic forces. He wrote that we should love the earth from which we came, that we should love life, we should have a zest for life. He would be an immortalist in every way, and I'm personally 100% confident that A, we will be able to bring him back to life, and you can have 100 ethicists analyze that, and they'll say if there was anybody who wanted to be brought back to life but just didn't really know it was technically possible because of when his body failed, it would be Teilhard du Chardin. We bring him back to life, he'll be kissing every finger and our toes. Love each other. I already talked about how he felt that was the glue that holds all of us together. And most of all, love the future. Teilhard was a futurist, and he continuously said that the answer is in the future. The answer is in the future. Love the future. Bring it forward with what you do. So let me wrap up with this last slide and then entertain any questions. From Terasem, we say life is purposeful. Teilhard, agree, absolutely, right on. Terasem, death is optional. Teilhard didn't know that. He wasn't aware of that technology. He would certainly say go for it. And here at Alcor, we are definitely, positively going for it. God is technological. Teilhard would say very, very, very technological. Most of our evolution is now coming from technology. Even all of our biological evolution is technology, just using genes and DNA. And lastly, love is essential. Teilhard for sure. Thank you very much for listening to my monologue here for a while, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Yes?
Few questions. What languages did he speak or read other than French?
It's a good question, and I don't know for sure the answer. I'm pretty sure that he read and spoke Latin because he was trained as a Jesuit, and that was part of his ringing. And in his writings, he's got a lot of Latin phrases. He ended up, his body passed. I don't believe when the body dies, the person dies. I just say the body died, you know, in New York City. So it is likely that he spoke and read English, but I don't know that for a fact.
Could you expand on your comments on gene synthesis, where you are, where you hope to go, how it fits in with Terasem?
Yeah, the gene synthesis effort has a big head of steam. As mentioned, we invested $50 million in synthetic genomics efforts. We've invested a like amount of money in our own efforts within our own company, United Therapeutics. And our goal is that before the end of this decade, to be able to transplant a genetically modified pig lung into a person with end-stage lung disease and to bring that person safely back to health. And once having accomplished that with the lung, shortly thereafter, during the 2020s, we would replicate that for the heart, kidney, pancreas, liver, and we would scale it up so they weren't Apollo mission kind of one-offs, but instead production scale organs. And I believe it's very realistic that by the end of the 2020s, people will kind of scratch their head at the notion that there were like a waiting list for an organ and that most people died without even getting on the waiting list, much less getting an organ, because, well, why didn't you just order an organ, what we call a xenograft, xeno being like not from a human source. But it turns out from Mother Nature that the pig, of all the animals in the animal kingdom, has organs which are best size matched for humans, even better size matched than a chimpanzee. And unlike a chimpanzee, there's no ethical questions associated with pigs. We eat 100 million pigs a year in the US. And also, unlike chimpanzees, pigs have large litters of around 10 piglets within a very short gestation period of 3 to 4 months. So we are now using Craig Ventnor's technology to scan the pig genome at a level of resolution that has never been done before, actually at a finer level of resolution than even the human genome has been scanned. And I'm inserting in there different human genes. As of now, we have the world record for the longest duration of a pig heart, a genetically modified pig heart, in a baboon, which is the model before you put them into humans, with normal immunosuppression, just the same immunosuppression that any old transplant patient would have, which is over 1 year now. And these baboons are at the NIH. In fact, there's 4 of them. So we've done it repeatedly, one after another. And we also have the world record on the lung as well. So there are other companies also working in this field, and I love it. I mean, competition to keep us immortal, I can't have enough of it. But my goal is, just like we've got B-52s flying now with replacement parts and being piloted by grandchildren of the people who flew the first B-52s, that we will be able to keep bodies going for limitless lifespans with continual replacement parts using genetically engineered pigs. Now, we have a second phase of our business where we actually strip the pig organ of all of its living cells so that all that is left is what's called the scaffold. This is the collagen structure of an organ about which all of our living tissue grows. Many of you may be aware, for example, that for many decades people have had pig valves as replacements. It's because those valves are stripped of all living cells, so there's no immune reaction. But the valve is very small, puck-shaped kind of thing. And we've now developed a technology that we could strip all the living cells off a complex thing like a lung, which if you look at it with no cells, it's super complex because literally got millions of little tiny arteries going to every alveoli. I mean, it's super, super spiderwebby. And then We take a person's own stem cells that we get from drawing some blood from them, or we take a skin biopsy and reprogram that to be a stem cell as an inducible pluripotent stem cell. And then grow those initially thousands into millions and then into billions of cells outside the body in what's called a hyperstack of plates. And then we infuse all of those cells of the person's own DNA and makeup over that scaffold that we originally got, that mold that we originally got from the pig. So that will be phase 2. And for the people being able to get those production organs, there'll be no need for any immunosuppressant at all, because the organ will be 100% matched to their own DNA. So they have like no immunosuppression whatsoever. And then finally, our third and final plan, and we're already working with 3D manufacturing companies, is to actually print these scaffolds. So we don't even need to harvest the scaffold from the pig to actually 3D print the scaffolds out of collagen or a similar material, and then again use your own stem cells to coat the scaffold. Amazingly, it takes only 6 to 8 weeks to go from like 1 million stem cells, which is not very many, to about 100 billion, which is about how many it takes to cover a full organ like a lung. So we're like totally focused on doing that. I'm positive that we will succeed. I have faith and belief because of science and technology that we will succeed. So our company's a publicly traded company. You could look it up on the internet. The ticker symbol is UTHR, like uniform, tango, hotel. And the company sells pharmaceuticals for the illness that our daughter was diagnosed with. Fortunately, she's now 30 years old and works in our company, is in charge of all digital presence and telepresence in our company. So she's doing very, very well. But unfortunately, many other people do not do as well as she does. And our medicines are essential to keeping people alive. We have 4 different medicines that are approved by the FDA, and we're on the verge of getting a 5th one approved. These medicines are paid for by the healthcare system, either Medicare or Obamacare, one or the other, whichever the person has. And then those revenues pay for us both to produce the medicines as well as to invest in ultimate cures for end-stage organ disease. And we have about 800 employees. Our main headquarters is in Silver Spring, Maryland, and our research and development headquarters is in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, near Raleigh-Durham. Our insurance and reimbursement assistance operations are based in Melbourne, Florida, which is where I make my own personal home. And then we also have offices in Chertsey, United Kingdom, an inhaler manufacturing operation in Germany, and then a deep research operation going on in Nanjing Medical University in Nanjing, China. Well, thank you so much, Bill.
Spectacular, just spectacular. The similarities between Terasem and what Martine and Bina are doing are absolutely remarkable. Similarities between what they are doing and the Church of Perpetual Life and some of the side activities that we are involved in. A founding tenet of our church, the Church of Perpetual Life, is that the indefinite extension of the healthy human lifespan is not only desirable, but it's attainable, and it's what the Creator intended for humanity to accomplish. Very similar to what you just heard Martine talk about with Terasem. No one can rationally argue that illness is preferable to good health. I don't think anyone could rationally argue that involuntary death is preferable to vibrant life. an increasing number of people are refusing to accept the concept of involuntary death. These enlightened individuals are rebelling against the societal and scientific inertia that is robbing us of our youth, our health, and our very lives. Now, the Church of Perpetual Life was established to fill a void that exists in current society. Current mainstream society, that is. If you happen to be in Melbourne, you could join the Terasem Church. But there wasn't an organization down here that would provide the type of uniting that we need. So our mission, the Church of Perpetual Life, our fundamental mission is to unite like-minded individuals, to teach scientific rationality, and then accelerate the Creator's plan for mankind to develop the technologies that will result in the evolution into an environment of perpetual abundance. I like the word perpetual abundance, by the way, more than perpetual duration. Fedorov was a Russian, and when we translate his words, they don't always ring through in the English language exactly the way we'd like. So perpetual abundance to me sounds a lot better. But what we're going to do is go to the first slide. It's the news update, by the way, for the week, and this is what appeared on the front page of the Wall Street Journal this week. It's an interesting chart, and what that chart shows is the fact that from the year 2000, wasn't that long ago, to where we are today, that if we live to be the age of 65, we've got an extra 2 years added to our average lifespan. And there weren't any major breakthroughs that occurred during that period. And by the way, that only really extends up to 2012. That's the data that they gathered. They looked at the deaths of people over the age of 65 in the year 2000, and then they went up to year 2012, and they found that the men were living 2 years longer, the women 2.4 years longer. Just with no major breakthroughs in technology, just some better preventative medicine, people living healthier lifestyles, resulted in a rather significant extension of the average lifespan. And this is the kind of data that I'd like to enlighten our parishioners about, that we are living longer. Progress is occurring slowly without the types of breakthroughs that Martine and so many others right now are putting huge amounts of effort into. Because once these breakthroughs occur, well, we're going to see charts that go way beyond the chart. In other words, it'll go from 86.6 years, it's going to go into the hundreds of years. This is a chart that we show in this church almost every session, but it's to remind the parishioners where humanity was back in the year 1900. And I don't know what your perspective is as far as 1900, if that sounds like a long time ago to you or a short time ago. But I was born in 1954. And when I was born, I knew people who were alive in 1900. People who were born before 1900. And in my career as a funeral director, I filled out a lot of death certificates where I would type in their date of birth in the 1880s, 1890s, and that was not unusual at all in the 1970s. So 1900, at least to me, was not that long ago, and yet people were only living an average of about 47 years. That's all they were living on average, and there was a high infant mortality rate. We understand that, but they still were not living anywhere near as long as what we are today. And they were dying of diseases that we now have control of today. Tuberculosis, diarrhea, diphtheria, pneumonia. Those diseases we have control over for the most part. And the people who do die of pneumonia, it's still way too many. That's primarily caused by immune senescence. And what we're going to have in our March presentation is Dr. Diparai Maharal. He's going to come down and tell us about immune senescence and ways that we can protect ourselves from this universally devastating condition that afflicts us if we live long enough. And that's why most people who die of pneumonia, they're elderly, and their immune systems have been devastated by the fact that their aging process has caused their immune cell production to decline and has enabled senile immune cells to linger and create chronic inflammatory conditions. So that March service, I hope all of you will attend and tell people who are concerned about their immune systems that we're going to put on a realistic presentation about what we can do now to help restore more youthful immune function to our aging bodies. And again, to remind people where we are today, and I feel a lot better being alive today, by the way, than when the founders of our country initiated the first documents of this country. They didn't live very long. A lot of people don't realize that the people who wrote the Declaration of Independence, their average age was only 44. That's all it was, 44 years of age. And they had terrible chronic health problems that made their life not a very enjoyable thing to endure. Problems like heartburn. They didn't have a real therapy for that. They just lived with heartburn. They lived with ingrown toenails. They lived with maybe some gallstones that weren't able to be removed in those days. Or they lived with chronic angina, chronic infections. A book called Revolutionary Medicine describes the health condition of the founding fathers of the United States, and their health was not good. They simply pushed through it. They lived with chronic health conditions that today we deal with. We have them treated and then they go away. We don't feel the pain anymore. But you realize we virtually doubled our average lifespan since the founding of this country. And that's a major accomplishment and something that is not fully appreciated. People just think, well, when you're 80 or 90, you're old. Well, that's how we think today. Back in the early days, if you made it to 60, that was an accomplishment. You were old at 60 and you suffered a lot of health problems. Okay, this will conclude our November 2nd service. The next service is going to be November 13th. We're going to have a speaker talking about ways to slow Alzheimer's disease and some other technologies that deal with neurological aging, which is a major problem for all of us. So if you know anyone who has a family member with that condition, this woman has gotten some remarkable clinical success from a lay standpoint. She's not a medical doctor, but she's used just her interpretation of the medical literature to get some very nice results. So that will be our November 13th event. And thank you all for coming, and enjoy the refreshments downstairs.